Hi, my name is Dr. Megan Turchetti. I'm a psychologist and I work for Sequest Mental Health Center. And I'm talking to you all today about the idea of finding playful solutions out of problems that you might be experiencing at home with your kids. So, this message is really for parents and caregivers who this week have just found out that school in New Hampshire will not be going back physically for the rest of the year. And you're probably experiencing a lot of thoughts and feelings about that. Maybe a sense of anxiety. What am I going to do for childcare for the rest of the school year? Maybe just a sense of sadness. Maybe this was a really important school year for your kid and you have a sense of the loss that they're experiencing, missing their teachers, and maybe also just a sense of fear. What will this mean for my child? All of those things that you're experiencing, your child is also probably experiencing on some level. But one of the tricky things about caring for children is that they don't have the same adult brains that we do. So when we're struggling with something, maybe we go for a run or call a friend and talk through it. We have skills that we've developed over the years to figure out how to work through big feelings. And our kids don't have those yet. Even I would say all the way up through teenagers. We develop those as we grow through life, through difficult situations. And something that's interesting is that your kids right now are in a situation that they'll probably develop important new coping skills that they'll use for the rest of their life as we go through this experience of COVID-19 together. So I want to talk to you a little bit about trying to bridge the gap between us thinking about what is my kid going through and how do we manage life at home and school at home and maybe my work at home too, and what your children's experience of this all might be like. And I want to make the suggestion that one of the best avenues that we have to communicate with our kids about what they're experiencing is actually through their play. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. And I'd also like to talk to you a little bit about how play can be kind of just a fun way to navigate around challenging situations at home. So I know that a lot of parents, myself included, are experiencing a little bit of this, a little bit of headbutting, maybe when they're trying to ask their child to engage in school materials or follow a routine because everyone keeps saying that routines are important, or maybe even just to do household activities that they were doing before all of this happened, pulling their own weight, making their bed, cleaning up after themselves. And you might be experiencing a lot more resistance from your kids than ever before. And part of that might be because of the big feelings that they're having about the way that their lives have changed that they were not yet able to verbalize. So one of the ways kids let us know that they're not doing well is through their behaviors. And I think it's always a good idea for parents to have a mindset of when you see a different behavior from your child, try to notice your reaction to it. And then also just try to be curious. I wonder what that's about for my kid. They don't usually resist this much. They don't usually test limits or draw on the wall or seclude themselves up in their bedrooms as much. I wonder what that's about. You might have a natural parent response that you have to have first, like setting a limit or responding to them. But if you can on the inside, try to cultivate a little sense of curiosity. I wonder what my kid might be showing me with this behavior. And I think if we can try to balance those two things, responding how you need to respond, like the caregiver or parent, and then also fostering a sense of curiosity about what the child might be going through, then we're able to sometimes take a little bit more of a playful approach to solving a problem than we would have been able to otherwise. So I'm going to just go through a few different scenarios where you might be experiencing challenges and make some suggestions about how you could find playful ways out of those problems. So if you have young children, you probably know that one of their least favorite things to do is, cleaning up their space afterwards, and thinking about young toddlers right now, where basically most of their play just involves dumping things out, going from container to container, and dumping everything out of a container. And then as a parent, you might be looking around and thinking, oh my gosh, the house is a mess, and that, look, they're not taking responsibility. Or maybe it's your 6 or 7-year-old that's doing some really neat imaginative play, but then it's going everywhere, all over their house, all over the house, and you're not seeing them wanting to clean up a space afterwards. And it might be really important for you guys to have clean spaces in the house, because you're all in it together right now. Maybe there's shared space that you need for a work purpose that, maybe there's toys all over for. So cleaning up space and transitioning kids out of free play into cleanup, into a new activity, tends to be one of the hardest things that parents have to deal with on a daily basis. Kids don't like to be interrupted, just like we don't like to be interrupted. Usually when they're engaging in play, it's really rich for them. They're having a good time, and they're right in the middle of something. So it's always a great idea to try to give your kids some gentle reminders when you're about to interrupt them. Just like if you were in the middle of an activity that you like, and all of a sudden somebody was going to pull the plug on it, you would deal with that better if you had a little bit of a 5-minute warning. So going to your child before you're going to say, okay, this is all over right now, we need to clean up, getting down on their level, making sure that you give them eye contact, and that you're doing kind of what we call whole body listening with them, saying, hey, I know you're having a great time right now. I need you to wrap this up in about 5 minutes. And then what I'll often include in that is, if the kid is engaged in really imaginative play, I might say something like, find an ending to this play. I can see you're doing some really cool stuff with your Legos, or I can see that you're doing some really neat stuff with your drawing materials right now. I want you to imagine, what might the ending to this story be in your play right now? Because in 5 minutes, I'm going to come over and it's going to be time for us to clean up. So if you give your children that opportunity to have a heads up, and then also for them to start working their own wheels around what's the ending of the play that I'm doing, in 5 minutes when you come over to say, okay, it's time to clean up, they're probably going to respond a little bit better. And if we play out the scenario in our mind, okay, if we come over and we say, time to clean up, and we kind of do it like an enforcer, like somebody who's ending the play, we wouldn't like that so much either. So you might experience a little bit more resistance. But if you can come into that scene and say, oh, what did you decide about the ending of your play? Can you tell me something about it? All of a sudden that feels kind of like you're excited about their play. It reminds them that it is the end of the play, but it gives them a chance to tell you a little bit about what they've been thinking and feeling during their play. And then you can have a nice connected moment. And from that nice connected moment, it will probably be a lot easier for you to say, okay, well, now what I need you to do is imagine putting all of these pieces back together on the shelves, or put all of your materials away. And then we're going to talk about, what happens next when you come into the next room. For young kids, that idea of turning cleanup into a game is also very helpful. So if you're in the stage of parenting where the play really is just about making the biggest mess in the household possible, engaging with them and saying, okay, if you have a large bin that you keep toys in, okay, the new game is everybody gets a point for every toy they get in the bin. And you're just coming in with a lot of enthusiasm, with a playful spirit. You've navigated them away from what they were doing into a new activity, and they might not even notice if they're very young children. And instead it's just about, oh, hey, look, my mom, dad, or caregiver is just really excited to play a new game with me. You've gotten them to clean up, and now you can move them into the next activity. So being mindful about giving them that transition time, thinking about how you could playfully transition between one thing and another, really helps grease the wheels of keeping things moving in a flow, avoiding oppositionality, avoiding negative headbutting, and also not making it so that you're feeling as much stress, because it's very stressful when our kids don't want to do the things that we need them to do. Okay, so another idea is for parents who are maybe noticing that their school-age child doesn't want to do schoolwork or clean up after themselves, that you might be just getting a lot of resistance with that. Again, first you want to notice the resistance, and you want to ask yourself the question, what is my kid communicating to me in this resistance? Is this about them maybe feeling a little bit of loss, a little bit of sadness that they don't get to see their friends as much, and they just need some negative way to kind of show that they're not okay right now. Um, but it's also helpful just to remember that as adults, there's a lot of things that we don't like doing either, but we do them because we're internally motivated to do them. Because if I do my dishes, even though I don't like doing my dishes, maybe afterwards I have a clean sink and I've learned to appreciate the beauty of a clean sink. Our kids don't care about things like that. It's not important to them the same way it's important to us. So being aware that children need support with different kinds of motivation, just like, we maybe wouldn't go to our challenging job if we weren't going if it was a volunteer job and we weren't going to get paid for it. Kids need some kind of motivation to do things that are really challenging for them. It's important to remember that if you can balance both internal motivation with making them feel proud of their accomplishments, as well as external motivation, because you did so well on your schoolwork today, you're going to get this reward. That works better than only using the external motivation, because then it gives them a sense of pride and accomplishment, and ownership of the tasks that they're doing. But it is helpful to have some kind of system in your home if you're encountering a lot of resistance. So what this might mean for younger kids is something that's very visual, like a pom-pom jar. A lot of classrooms use activities like this. So if you're unsure about what works well for your child, you could reach out to their classroom teacher and see what they're doing for positive reinforcement in the classroom that your child already knows and is familiar with. Or for older children, it might just be a whiteboard that has points on it. And then there's a goal for every day. Here's the number of points you need to get this reward that we've decided on. Um, you know, I think it's best if the reward can be something that's fun and engaging and not simply just a dessert every night or increased screen time. If you need to use those things because that's what motivates your child, that's fine. Sprinkle those in, but think about the rewards that you're using as something that you want to have a diverse pool of, and that if you can include some fun family activities, like we'll have a camp out in the living room, or tonight we'll play dinner like it's a restaurant, and you can order whatever on a menu that I make for you, something that's fun and engaging but family oriented. Those things work really well too. um, Let them come up with some ideas, brainstorm together about what would be motivating for them, and set limits. Yeah, like you're not going to buy them a new Lego every time that they accomplish their school task for the day, but maybe that can be a reward that they work up to 50 points for. So at the end of several weeks, if you have a kid that's a little bit older that can keep a long-term goal in their mind, that might work for them. The younger the kid is, the more immediate the positive reinforcement probably needs to be. But even children as young as 5 and 6 are often able to work towards a goal that they won't get immediately. So like a morning goal and an afternoon goal, for example. So I would say too, when you're giving your kid a point because they've accomplished something, that's such a great moment to be able to not only say, yep, you got a point, or yep, you got a pom-pom in the jar, but also to say, I love the way you did that, with sort of this enthusiasm and labeling of what you've seen that they've done. I could tell you really didn't want to do your math work. You felt so angry when it was time to do math work, and I saw you push through that, and I saw you use your skills, and then I saw how good you are at math, and I am so impressed by you. That turns it from just a simple behavioral reinforcement all of a sudden to this really connected moment where you're using your verbal skills to describe for your child what they're doing that's positive, that they can then start talking to themselves about in a positive growth mindset kind of way. And then another one that just is a little bit of a fun, silly bypass for challenging moments is the idea of labeling the resistance or labeling the negative experience your child is having. This one might not go over so well with your teenagers, but maybe 12 and younger. If your kid is giving you a lot of pushback and is grumpy or agitated, rather than saying things like, you're being so difficult right now, try to use a little bit of externalization and instead say something like, wow, your mood is really getting in the way of you being able to do what you need to do today. That must be really annoying for you that your mood is doing that to you. So you just see the just gentle shift there. It's not about them being difficult. All of a sudden, it becomes about being in a difficult mood and what a challenge is that for them. For younger kids, you can even get a little bit more silly and a little bit funnier with it and say things like, you've got your Krabby Pants on. And we all know when you've got your Krabby Pants on, we don't do things, with as much ease. Or if you also fold it back onto yourself and say, gosh, I woke up with my Krabby Pants on. So I need to go use a skill for a minute. I need to go take a few deep breaths and draw for a little bit. So you're modeling for them what's the skill that you want them to try to use by doing it yourself a little bit. And you're also saying, not only you get into a bad mood, sometimes I do too. That folds in social modeling in a really lovely way. And you're reminding them it's not that you are a problem, it's that the problem you're having is a problem. So that helps move kids out of sometimes the shame and embarrassment of knowing that they're not acting in an appropriate or positive way in the family. Because I think something that we often forget is that when kids aren't doing well, when they're pushing back on us, a lot of times they're not feeling good about those choices. They might get into a little bit of a punky space and want to say, ha ha ha, if you've got a kid that kind of gets into a defensive space like that. But afterwards, they're not feeling great about the choices that they've made. So if we can help them understand that we see them and we know that they're good at heart because we love them and they're good at heart, but that sometimes a mood that they might get into or a behavior that they choose, that's the problem. They're not the problem. So using that technique of externalization and doing it in somewhat of a playful way, if you feel like that's helpful for your child, sometimes getting angry at the problem. Oh, I hate that grumpy feeling. That grumpy feeling always gets in the way, doesn't it? I bet you're frustrated with that grumpy feeling too. Things like that can help a kid feel more like, oh, right. Like, I want to be connected to you, and I don't like what my grumpy mood is doing. So think about that as a possibility. For older teenagers that have more emotional intelligence already developed, you might just say things like, I think that you're in a bad space right now. And I don't think that we can have great communication when you're in bad space. So I'm here for you and I love you, but I need you to work through this bad space until we can really be connected and see things from the same place. Um, so then the last thing that I want to just make a little bit of a pitch for is this idea, again, for younger children, that if you're wondering about what's going on for your kid, and I think we've all had the experience of sitting around the dinner table and saying something like, how was your day today? Like, what did you do? And getting the kind of classic one-word response of good. That if you are able to have a little bit of access to your child's play, then you can learn a lot about what's on their mind. From kind of a psychological theory standpoint, we think about children's play as a form of projection. They are taking the thoughts and feelings and ideas in their mind and they're putting them into their play to make a little world for themselves. So this might involve, play with little figurines, barn animals, or Legos, or dollhouse figures, or this might involve pretend play where they're playing family or they're playing school in some way. For older kids, sometimes it takes a transition around latency age 9, 10 into like maybe their video game world, their Minecraft world, or the drawing that they're doing. And for teenagers, it is a little bit different. So I'll get to teenagers in a second, but thinking first about the young children that you have at home. If you're wondering how they're doing, a great thing to do is just to try to take this approach of child-directed play therapy. And what that really means is that you position yourself near wherever they're playing, and then you resist all of the urges to interrupt their play. So as parents nowadays, very often we're taught that we should always be stretching our child's learning experience. So I've got some barn animals in my office, so I'm just going to grab these. So if we see our kid and they're using little figurines and they're playing, a lot of times we feel the urge to say, what does the cow say? Show me that you know this. And we kind of take over their play and we turn it into a learning or teaching moment. And you know what? That's fine. It's important to do that sometimes. And I think our kids like that. But there also needs to be some space for them to just have the blank, canvas, and for us to allow them to just put whatever they want to on it. So for child directed play, we're really thinking about parents taking a very present observer stance. And your participation might be something like just reflecting back. So your child there's a Dalmatian, here's a cow, and maybe you see them knocking into each other and you're thinking, oh, I don't want them to do that, I don't want them to be fighting, so you want to like stop the play. Other times, if you want to take the child directed approach, you might just say, those animals aren't getting along. I think they might be fighting. You're knocking the animals together. Or you could just say something like, I wonder what's happening there. So you're giving them an invitation that you're going to follow them in the play, and then you're just going to kind of notice. A lot of times it's a little bit like a metaphor. So their play takes on some theme. It's about a family. It's about a school. It's about conflict or a fight, and you kind of have to say, oh, like I wonder what that might mean for them. And it's not usually literal. It's not usually they're going to say, here's the problem I'm having, and play it out exactly in their play. But usually you'll get some kind of theme or some kind of information from them about the kinds of things that show up often in their play. And it's just like a little window into their mind. So I think parents might find it useful to take that approach if they're worried about how their kid is processing all of the stress of right now. A lot of times, if we don't get into a talkable space about what they're worried about, it comes out before bedtime. And that's when people, need their parents and want to say, well, here's all the things I can't go to sleep for because I'm worried about all these things. So being able to show your kid that you guys can join about, things they're worried about in other ways during the day, like through their play. So you might notice maybe all of a sudden their play has a lot more to do with illness. Maybe your play has a lot more to do with kids not being able to see each other. And you're just reflecting, you're thinking a lot about, people being sick right now. And then maybe afterwards, after they've finished up the play, you say something like, it can be scary to think about when people are ill. It can be scary to think about people having to go to the hospital. It can be sad to think about when we don't have our friends to play with. So you can tell this is really language that you'd be using for a younger child. And for an older kid, you might just be reflecting with them. I was watching you play with your dolls today, and I noticed that your dolls were in separate houses and couldn't talk to each other. I wonder if that's a little bit how you feel with social distancing right now. It made me curious about what this is all like for you. So you can take something that shows up in their play, and then for an older kid, you might be able to have more of a conversation with them about it. But I think it's helpful if we all kind of think about children's play as this rich space where we might learn a little bit about them than if we just ask direct questions. So I want to speak just for a second to the teenagers. And I think that, teenagers don't stop playing. Actually, humans never stop playing. It just changes. What's playful to us, what's exciting to us just changes through the lifespan. And if you have a teenager right now that's stuck at home, it's probably pretty frustrating because one of the main ways that teenagers play is in developing social relationships that are a little bit more mature and exciting than simple friendships, and creating more depth to their friendships and maybe exploring, what does it feel like for me to want to have some kind of romantic relationship with a peer of mine. And while much of their social lives may have already existed online, this probably does feel strange to them to not have those social interactions. So I would just encourage parents to be mindful that social interaction is how older, children and teenagers especially it's kind of their form of play. So knowing what kind of social interaction your teenager is having right now, what platforms are they using? I'm assuming a lot of it is going to be just through social media right now. It's always a good idea to have a little bit of a handle on what types of platforms are your kids using for social interaction. And then to set really clear boundaries with your kids about what are the expectations. They might have a phone, they might have, other devices or a laptop, and setting clear expectations about what your oversight of those things is going to be, what supervision is going to be involved. Because just like you wouldn't let a 13 and 14-year-old necessarily just leave the house for hours, a child that age probably needs to have some degree of oversight about the way that they're using social media right now too. But it is important for them, and it is kind of like a form of play for them to figure out, wow, these relationships are suddenly so much more interesting and confusing and exciting. So it's an important thing for them to have appropriate access to. Yeah, so I hope that everyone out there is doing well. I hope that the people in your life are safe and healthy, and if they're not, I hope that you have love and support during that time. And I think this moment, for your kids is going to have a lot of growth and a lot of new skills that they might be learning, and also a chance to connect with you, because you as their caregiver, even when they can't stand you, even when they might tell you that they hate you or not want to talk to you for days if you've got a teenager, you are the most important person to your child, and you being okay through this is going to have a huge impact on how okay they're going to be able to feel. So fill your own cup first so that you have something to pour, and make sure that you, as often as you can be, are in at least just a calm, regulated body state. And if you can't be, if you know that you're all the way up to here and you hear the yelling and you kind of feel that you're in an emotional space that's not working, give yourself permission to pause and use a skill. Focus on bringing yourself back down into kind of a calm body state, before you expect that your kid's going to be able to meet you in a calm body state too. So it's a hard moment, and it's going to be a challenging time probably for a lot of people, but there's great opportunities here for you to get to know your kid and to really see what this moment means for them. So I wish everybody the best of luck with where you're at, and please remember that if you need support, there are a lot of places to reach out to.